I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Well, welcome back to all of our listeners who hopefully maybe have missed us a little. We've been gone for about 3 weeks. We've had a lot going on in both of our lives, and this is actually the first time that we've actually been able to talk at any kind of length, and certainly as face to face as we can get in different parts of the world. So I just want to say to my dear friend, I'm so happy to see you and,
Yes.
and be in community with you again. I've missed you terribly. So
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, yeah,
I have missed you too. I know we've gotten to be in our like text message communication.
yeah.
And I've missed being able to also do this and have conversations. And I was like a little hesitant with what that could look like after. I think most of all of our listeners might have heard or anything like that, that the things going on, one of the things is I had a unexpected, I guess this could be unexpected for people in their lives, a stroke. So, and being a young person and not having any things that would signify that I don't have hypertension or diabetes or
Mm.
I'm not overweight in any way. I eat healthily and it's important to sleep and also try to minimize. Sleeping might be a thing that
One of the things
is
you need to work
important to
on.
make sure that you do. But yeah, so I'm here and I am conscious. So just to be upfront, I'm conscious of like after these things, the way that you speak sounds a little bit different. So I'm just asking people to have like grace with that. Yeah. But
Yeah,
I'm here and I'm present and I'm glad to be seeing my friend Deanne and talking to the larger community of people who listen to us.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's been yeah, it's been quite a 3 week span of time, and I guess I'll maybe start first with just kind of giving folks an idea of what I have been processing the past couple of weeks. I did a short video just to let listeners know that we were going to be taking a break, and I just got back a couple of days ago from being down in North Carolina, where I grew up and where my family, a lot of my family still are, in celebrating my mom, who passed away in December. And we decided she wanted to be cremated. And so, of course, because of that, we were able to delay a service for her. We decided to wait because was her favorite time of year. And
yay.
we talked a lot about where we wanted to have the service. She was not a church going person. She had gone to church, at different times over the course of my life for sure. I grew up, I think I've mentioned that, maybe I haven't, that when I was growing up, church was kind of a punishment for us. I grew up in
Hmm.
the Episcopal Church faith, and I more than once remember mom saying, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to make you go to church on Sunday. So
Oh wow.
so it wasn't really, I didn't
But
really
yeah.
develop a relationship with a higher power or a God at
Hmm.
all until I got sober.
Hmm.
That was really my foray into having a decent relationship with God. I was one of those youngsters that questioned everything that I couldn't see. So I remember having very in-depth
Mm.
conversations with my Sunday school teacher about, prove to me that God exists. And so so when we were talking about where we would celebrate her, it just didn't really resonate with my soul to try to find a church to have this service,
Hmm.
because if she'd had a church that she went to regularly, then maybe that would have been different, but she didn't. And so we talked about having it in her backyard, which was her church, surrounded
Oh
by her
wow.
flowers and
Yeah.
her birds and this massive wind chime that she has hanging on the side of her house that weighs God knows how much, but it has this deep resonant sound. And every time while we were setting up and getting things ready, every time it would sound, we'd be like, "Hi, Mom," and Yeah, she's talking to us. And so, a lot of planning with my siblings. I still have an older sister and a bonus brother who live in that town. So God thank them. They did a lot of legwork for the prep. We still had her house because we were staying there routinely when we came down to see her. And so rented a tent and did all of the things to make sure that everybody would be comfortable in the mid-afternoon of a May day in North
Yeah.
Carolina, which can be a little warm.
When it's hot.
Yeah. And family came down from Canada because my late stepfather's children, he was from Montreal, so his kids and grandkids all live up in Canada. So one of them lives in Australia, so she had to come over for that. And so we had the service. It was lovely. It was about 100 people that showed up. I was really nervous that people weren't going to show, not only because she was in a later age bracket, and so often so many of their friends and cohorts have already passed. She has a best friend that lives in Atlanta who wasn't able to travel. And but also too, having, her passing was in December, and then not having her service until May. Sometimes people lose track
Yes.
and they fade away and they don't know and don't see. So we did a lot of pushing out of the information on social medias and things because she was on Facebook and just trying to let people know. But we also did a Facebook live stream for anyone that couldn't make it there in person. We weren't able to hear from those folks in terms of stories and whatnot, but they got to witness the sharing. And I know you've watched it because we were able to save the video, which was really meant a lot, to be able to have that capturing of the moment. So yeah, when I displayed the massive portrait that my dear friend Elena, who's my spiritual mom, created and started painting while mom was transitioning out. So in the final weeks of mom's life, Elena was capturing her on canvas forever, and so that was the focal piece in the middle. And it felt like she was there. Really, I felt her big time. I felt her energy
Hmm.
every time the birds started singing, or the wind chime gonged, or the breeze kicked up. It really felt like she was there. And my daughter surprised me and everyone else with getting up with one of the other grandchildren to share how much it mattered to her, or how much her grandmother mattered to her, even though their relationship was rocky. It was tough.
Uh-huh.
Amy
Yeah.
often was the target of mom every time mom would be. She was bipolar, and often in a survivor of sexual abuse, trauma based, in her childhood, and so she would often find a target and go for it. And unfortunately my daughter was often that target.
Hmm.
So she did get up and share. I'm very, very grateful that I think I've shared here that, I felt like I really developed a much better relationship with my mother at the end of her life the last 2 years, as I was kind of managing her health care and having lots of conversations with all of her caregivers and her. And I think my daughter had the same gift of being able to,
Hmm.
mom kind of dropped her need to control as much. She's a major
Yeah.
control freak, which is where I get it. Thanks, mom. Um,
We all
yeah.
have a form of like wanting to
Well,
control,
my
but that's what
days,
mothers
yeah.
do,
And I'm a
right? We gotta
control
take
freak.
care of a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I've got a very methodical brain and can get a lot of things crossed off lists, which is good, but I've had to really work on that piece for my relationship building and just being in community with others. My daughter has a little bit of that as well, but yeah, it was lovely to see and hear from others that they had also experienced a softening of her edges and her walls and her surrender, really, to allow others to care for her at the end, which was hard for her. It's hard for me. I don't like asking for help. I don't like showing weakness. Weakness to me is vulnerability, and she really had that going on for herself as well. But at the end, she was able to drop that a little bit and open herself up to others. So then we traveled to the beach, which is where her late husband, we put him into the ocean at the beach. That's where we all gathered as a family. The USians and the Canadians would get together one week every year, and the beach was available this week. And so we, on Mother's Day, we honored her by putting a good part of her in the ocean. The rest is going to go up to Maine, where her her mother and father and her sister are in Blue Hill Bay up there. So it was very healing. I slept a lot. And
Good.
the weather wasn't great in the beginning.
Mhm.
It was early in the season for us. We usually went there later in the summer, so we had to contend with some rain and things, but the start of healing family, and that was good. So took the portrait with me, had it sitting in the living room, so mom was there, and yeah. So I'm just returning from all of that, and yeah, it was a long 2 weeks, but it was a good trip for sure.
I'm so, so glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that. And what comes to I have a curiosity about as the family was planning and coming together for you particular, because I don't know about your siblings and the rest of the care community, but for you in particular, what was the thing that was most important to honor and highlight, or that you wanted to like uplift about your
Hmm.
mother in this celebration?
That's a great question. I don't know if I think the thing that I really stood for as we were planning it was where it was going to be. There was some waffling on whether or not we would pick a church. She went to this church a few times and maybe we could do it there. And I just was, it was, it, I kind of stood that ground on that hill. And not that I was having to fight a lot with the siblings. It just, I was like, I really think it needs to be in her backyard. That is her, that's
Mm.
where, and then trying to resurrect because she'd been out of the house for almost 3 years. And so while it was still maintained and, her backyard was still beautiful, one of the things that she'd love to do every year was plant lots and lots and lots of flowers, and that had really kind of gone away while she was gone. And so we were like, we gotta replace those flowers. We got to get the place looking good because she would be appalled if it wasn't. And I have to
Mm.
say that the grass was not so much grass, it was a little more weeds than it
Mm.
was grass. And I was like, she really would not be happy about that.
Oh no, yeah.
But we were putting a tent on top of it,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
hopefully nobody noticed. And so yeah, I thought about that quite a bit. But I did want to speak to when I did get up and speak. I talked about the portrait story because that was done by my spiritual mother, and those two, my mother and Elena, had never actually met in person. So I wanted to kind of represent for that. But I also spoke to how our relationship had changed and how I was
Mm.
so grateful that she had opened up and allowed herself to be vulnerable. And I thought that was really important for people because there was people from so many different walks of life for her. And some of those folks probably knew her when she went into those moments of not being very kind. And I wanted to speak into that. I wanted to
Yeah.
say that she got to a better place before she left than she was before. And so that was important for me. And then my daughter got up and spoke about my mother's generosity in terms of her grandchildren and how all of them were graduating from college and grad school debt free because of her. And that I didn't even know she was going to get up and speak,
Okay.
so I didn't know what she was going to say. And I thought that was really, I thought it was beautiful. Number one, that she noticed, that she realized what a privilege that was, and then that she spoke into it and really embodied that, because that is a huge privilege and a huge gift that she gave to all of them. So, and I hadn't really honed in on that. So,
Lovely. What I heard in that was one of the things that was most important is finding like an environment that was really representative of your mom. And of course you had that amazingly beautiful portrait as a center point, a focus. And
mhm.
I noticed as I was watching this celebration how a lot of people continue to like be able to use that, like to highlight your mother's smile, to highlight, things that tapped into the memory of her experience. And I thought that that was particularly beautiful and like really nice to have something like that to like help hold people in the space. You could see that. And then as you're speaking about the sensitivity of relationship that was occurring with your mom, as a person outside of the space and not knowing any of your nuclear family,
Hmm.
when we have close relationships with people whose lives we celebrate, that's like a different experience. But then all of the other folks that were, I guess, aunts, so, extended family and
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
everyone that I heard speaking really spoke about your mother's generosity. So
Yeah.
like the close relationships were like, there's like some edginess, we're trying to figure it out, glad mom softened. And then there's a whole community of experience that really experienced like a lovely, smiling, generous, giving human being. And that it makes me, as I've just gone through this experience of like I could not be here functioning in the way I could not be here. That's number A. But then functioning the way that I'm functioning, and then what do it really calls into a thought process of like, what are the experiences and how are people close to you and your nuclear family experiencing life with you, and then all of the people that come into your world, and as you were speaking about that, and in the way that you were honoring your mother, and those things that come up like as we think about what transition looks like, passing on, celebrating the life and the consciousness that we have here. And then the other thing that I was hearing from you that is interesting when we're thinking about death and transition is the rituals that we do a part of that to like bring us through. So your
Mm-hmm.
family being able to honor your mother in the garden, a place that was so important for her, to have the flowers that would bring her joy. So like that's just bringing her into the space. And then also reminding the people who showed up what, the things that were like most important to your
Hmm.
mom. And I imagine that her being able to bear witness to how people were honoring her really felt good, and however her spirit has transitioned. And I think that that is really special. And um,
Well, we didn't know, first of all, nobody RSVPs to a memorial service, so you don't know who's showing up. And then
okay.
we really didn't have an order of service. We
Mm,
the woman that we asked to MC it was my younger sister's best friend, and is my younger sister's best friend, and has known, has been a part of our family. She used to travel with us. She mentioned during her opening remarks that she used to travel with us when she and my younger sister were in college and best buds. The younger sister always had to have somebody with her because she always felt a little, I
too
mean,
young.
I observed as her feeling maybe a little outside of because my older sister and I are only 3 years apart, and then younger is 6 years younger than me. So there's a significant gap in age, and it played into those dynamics of she really kind of was raised as an only child in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
There's a dynamic between my older sister and I and our mother that is very different than the younger. And so when we would go on family trips, I think Cece always felt like she maybe had to have somebody with her, like an ally or something, because it just felt like
Fun.
safer. And I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm speaking for her, so Cece, if that's not true, sorry about that. But so anyway, Sarah came on many family trips with us, and knew our mother really well. And so when we were thinking about who was going to MC it, if you're doing these kinds of things at a church, you typically have the pastor be the person who kind of runs the show. And we didn't have that. And so it was like, so we thought about having a pastor do it. And that did not resonate with me. I was like, why are we trying so hard to bring Christian guidance into this when, I mean, my mother identified as a Christian, but that wasn't a big part of her life. So having Sarah do it was really meaningful in so many different ways because we know her grounding, we know her spiritual base. My daughter used to call her Mama Sarah when she was growing up because Sarah was just this embodiment of Mother
There.
Earth.
Yeah.
And so having her, but then we didn't know who else was going to be there. And so we had remarks. We knew that a couple of us wanted to speak, but then we opened it up to the audience. We said, if anybody would like to come share a story, please do so. And we had no idea if anybody would. So it was beautiful that somebody from her stitching community came up, and she was hilarious. I'd never met her before, but she was really funny and talked about mom's, her visits to the yarn store, which for mom was like Mecca, I mean, going into the yarn
Yes.
store. And she has closets and closets and closets of needlepoint and cross stitch
Oh,
unfinished projects. And And so
Yeah.
that was her crack, you know, if you will. And so she told a great story about that, of mom coming in and picking out projects for the
Yes.
grandkids.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah, and then another woman, Jean Payne, who we've all known growing up, I didn't realize was very involved in supporting kids in the local school that were having trouble reading or whatever. And mom, that's how mom got involved with that. She knew Jean, and Jean asked her to help. And so mom taught all of these kids how to read. And I knew, or helped them learn how to read. And I knew that she had done that, but I guess I didn't quite I didn't quite know the extent to which she did, and how many lives she touched. And then of course the note that I read from the CEO from the Sandhills Children's Center, which was where I got bit by the
Yes.
blood bug,
Yes.
because mom was on the board of that school, and when I was growing up, and I used to go play with the kids, and then I became, you know, a teacher's assistant, and then I, you know, that's how I wanted to go into special ed. That was where I got the bug. So it really, really, really meant a lot to hear from all these different people, none of whom we spoke to before the service, so we did not know they were going to speak, but they felt compelled to get up and share that part of mom's story, and that really meant a lot. So yeah, it was a it for the control freak in me really wanted to know who was going to do what. When I was putting the program together, I was like,
Yeah.
I wanted to have an order of service, but then I didn't really have anything to write on it, so I just took it out and put nothing but pictures on the program, and because I thought people would find that lovely. And so yeah, the control freak in me had a hard time not knowing if anybody was going to share anything. But I do think that mom, if mom was watching, and I think she was, I do think she might have been embarrassed a little bit by the accolades and all this.
Oh.
She did not like to be center of attention. When she was at the dedication for the skate park that was named for her, a couple of us, you know, were like, "See, mom, this is your legacy." And she's like, "It's not about me. It's about the kids. It's not about me. It's about the kids."
Nice.
And I really appreciated seeing that selflessness. I knew
Mhm.
she projected that in her actions, but she also came from immense privilege and hadn't really deeply unpacked that before she left the earth. So it was nice to see her exude that, and then to hear from others how they saw her exude that. So
Yeah, the impact of her presence on life. I do want to offer something because as we're talking about faith and what church looks like, another thing as somebody observing, I was like, where is this amazingly beautiful background? I was like, is that like the burial ground or what?
mm,
But and I hadn't remembered or realized that that your mother was cremated. So, but I was just like, this is like so extraordinary. It's so beautiful there, and that is church.
yeah,
That's church to me.
that
You know
is,
what I mean? And then when a congregation of people come together with like a high vibration intention, really good storytelling about life and being good and not not even just being good because good, bad, that's all relative, but like having impact on people's lives where it can be reflected and the stories be told and you see like what like the waves of connection are
mhm,
and how we come together like in a ecosystem in a community of care for one another
mhm.
um, that was really reflected in that celebration of life and I think that that's really important and it makes me have another real big question for you
Okay.
in your time of passing what do you think would be one of the things that you would want folks to honor about your presence and existence and
Oh,
storytelling? Yeah,
yeah,
it's a big question. It's a big
it
one.
is a big
I gotta ask
question.
you these questions because you know
Yeah,
I just played with death, so they've been on my mind.
I know you did. And I don't want to get through
Yeah,
this
we'll get
episode
there.
without
We'll get there.
talking and
No, 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 we'll
sharing,
get there.
because I want to honor what you've been through as well. I feel like I've been taking up a lot of space, and I'm not used to that, or I try not to do that anymore. And so, what would I want people? I think your question was, what would I want, how would I want to be remembered when I leave the earth? And yeah, I mean, very similarly, if you'd asked me if I would want the same things as my mother, or want the same path that my mother might have walked, you know, not that long ago, I might have said, "Hell no, I don't want anything to do with that." Um,
Yeah.
Largely because of her, just, you know, her often obliviousness to her privilege. But clearly she has taught me about generosity and giving away that
Mm,
which you have, um,
mm,
and helping and serving others, and the importance of that, and then the also the importance of being quiet about it when you're doing it. That was the other thing
mhm.
I kind of took away
Okay.
from that, these folks got up and shared about how she'd impacted their lives. My best friend from college got up and shared a story about how mom offered her private plane because she and my dad owned a plane for a time, in connection with my aunt and uncle. They owned it together, and my best friend at the time, who was it was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and her grandfather was dying, and she couldn't afford to fly home, and she was afraid she was going to miss his passing. And I remember now, I did not remember the story, but I remember now reaching out to mom and saying, "Mom, can you send the plane?" And she said, "Absolutely." So she sent the plane down to Biloxi and picked Cindy up and got her home to see her pop up before he passed. And I had totally forgotten about that story. And so, I'm identifying now that I tend to do that. I tend to do things like that, and not, I don't have a plane, but help people in different ways and not tell anybody about it, which is one of the things I learned in recovery.
Mm,
There's a pamphlet that I really love that says "Just for Today." In fact, I have it around here somewhere. And one of the things on "Just for Today," I will do something nice for someone and I won't tell anybody. If anyone finds out about it, it doesn't count. Um, so
mm,
that's something I kind of challenged myself to do. And I don't know, I felt a kinship with her on that. Moving, and nobody has to know how I move. I just move. So
yeah.
hopefully
Yeah,
that's
that's special. I remember hearing something like really the quality of your character is really determined about how you behave when no one's watching,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
Decisions you
it's
make
like that.
when no one knows what your decision is the key
Mhm,
character. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I appreciate that. And so I said plain, but when we started, I was just like, this is a really good episode and something that has been coming to me as I've been in communication with my community of care and folks that love me and folks that are checking on me. And there is something also about my character that, will try to come up with some kind of haha about a situation that might be traumatic otherwise, or
Yeah.
giggle it off. That's my coping mechanism. So I've been saying, yeah, I was just dancing with death. And um and when I say that, it really is dancing with death, like and the image of a Grim Reaper might come up. And it's more about getting to closer to the reality of your mortality and what that looks like, right? And then and those is why I was asking you specifically those questions about your mother and what this process looked like of doing a celebration of someone's life, what it looked like to be thinking about the history of experience, to see what the storytelling is, and to pull in the things that are like critical about the way that you culture as a family together, right? To celebrate in the passing. And going back to that's what the basis of faith is. That's what the basis of church and religion is for me, however it is demonstrated by other components of belief. But those are the core things that we do. We come together with people in our community of care with the same like type of intention about something.
Oh,
And that's really beautiful.
yeah.
Um, so I've had a lot of time to think and to rest and to be uncomfortable with myself. And to I've helped with folks with stroke before, like as a caregiver. And in this moment, having to be cared for, I resonate with a lot that you say. And that's something interesting about women who are like, single mothers raising people, and then it be difficult to ask for help or to be unable to operate and move in the way that, is at 100% production,
Hmm.
and how scary that feels. So, yeah, let's talk about dancing with death on the other side,
Yeah.
not oops, not after not after we've transitioned, but before we transition, we have an opportunity to be thinking about what transition actually does look like, and then who is impacted with and from that.
Mm.
Do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time,
Why
as you
do I
move
try
throughout
so
your day,
hard?
continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a
Why
fuck?
Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.
Why do I